This next section I'm going to talk about resizing columns and rows. Although I'm going to focus primarily on resizing columns, just know that you can do the same thing for both columns and rows. So here we have a worksheet, and you'll notice that in column B I have some sharp symbols that are showing in cells 12 and 13, B12 and B13. Now, if you ever see sharp symbols in your cell, that is not an error. It doesn't mean anything is wrong. That just means that there is more data in the cell than what the cell can show you because it's too small. So we have to resize this column to show the data. To resize a column, you're going to move your cursor in between the headers. So here we have header B and header C. So I'm going to move my cursor right in between those, and I'm going to see a double-sided arrow. When I see that, if I click and drag, I can resize the column. Notice that the sharp symbols disappeared, and I can now see my data. Let me do that again. I'm going to move my cursor up between B and C, click and drag to resize. When I let go of my left mouse button, that's when it stops resizing. Now notice that when I click and hold down my left click button, a little pop-up shows up. It says width 13.43, 99 pixels. So this tells me the size of my column. So if there's a particular size it needs to be, I can click and drag until that size appears. And I can do this for all my columns. I can also do this for rows. So if I move my cursor in between the headers of rows 1 and 2, for example, I get that double-sided arrow. I can click and drag to make row 1 a little bit wider. Now let's say I have data in my cell that's not showing. So here in column F, row 1, so cell F1, I see budgeted amount, but notice that the text doesn't completely display, so I need to resize column F. I can move my cursor up between F and G and click and drag, or I can double click when I see the double-sided arrow, and the column will automatically resize to fit the content. So again, I'm going to resize that smaller. If I double click, it resizes so that it fits the content. And that's how you resize a single row or a single column in Excel. What if we need to resize multiple rows or multiple columns? Now I can go through and I can resize them all one at a time, but let's say I want to do it all at once. If I highlight columns B, C, and D, for example, I can resize columns B, C, and D at once. To highlight a column, you're going to move your cursor towards the center of the header. You'll see a thick dark arrow facing down. Click and drag across the columns, and you'll notice that the columns are highlighted. Once you have your columns highlighted, you're going to move your cursor up between the next set of columns, in this case D and E. Click and drag to resize column D. Whatever you resize column D to, B and C will also be resized. I'm going to hit undo, and one more time I'm going to show you how to do this. Highlight columns B, C, and D. Move your cursor between columns D and E. Click and drag. Whatever you resize column D to, B and C will also be resized. I'm going to hit undo one more time. Now let's say you want to resize multiple columns or rows, but they're not next to each other. How do you do this? Well, first you highlight the first column that you want to be resized. Tap and hold down the Control key on your keyboard. Then highlight the next column, in this case D. Then highlight another column if you need, in this case F. It's important that you first highlight a column and then hold down the Control key. When you have your columns highlighted, you can let go of the Control key and then resize the last column. Whatever the last column was resized to, the other columns will also be resized. Let me do that one more time. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight column B by clicking into the column B header. Next, I'm going to hold down the control key, and I'm going to keep my control key held down until I finish highlighting my columns. So I'm going to highlight D and F while holding down that control key. I can now let go of my control key and then click and drag to resize column F. Whatever I resize column F to, B and D are also resized to. I'm going to hit undo. So why is it very important that you first highlight a column and then hold down the control key and highlight your other columns? Well, let's look what happens if I don't do that. So if I were to just hold down my control key and then highlight my columns, notice that this cell is also highlighted. That's because this cell was active when I held down my control key. When you hold down your control key on your keyboard, that lets you highlight or select multiple items, not necessarily items that are the same type. So I can actually hold down my control key to select multiple cells at once. With Excel, if I have a cell highlighted with my columns, I will be unable to resize my columns at the same time because this cell is highlighted, and that typically will confuse Excel, the program, because it can't resize a single cell. It can only resize columns or rows. So if you're trying this and it doesn't work, make sure you don't have a cell that's highlighted by itself. Next, let's talk about deleting columns or rows and adding columns or rows. So first, let's say you want to delete a column or row. You're going to move your cursor to the header of the column or row. In this case, we'll use column. Here we have column G, and notice that I just have notes and only 2 cells really have data, so this column G is not really that important. I decided to delete it. I'm going to move my cursor to the header, right click, choose delete. And that's it. That's how you delete a column. Notice that all the other columns were subsequently renamed. So now the old column H is the new column G. The old column I is now the new column H. The reason why Excel does that is because it has to be in order. It has to be A, B, C, D, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So whenever you delete a column or delete a row, it's going to rename everything to fit that pattern. I'm going to hit undo one more time. Move your cursor to the header, right click, choose delete. Let's look at a row. I'm going to move my cursor to the header, right click, choose delete. If you decide that you want to get your data back or get your row or column back, you can just click the undo button. And that's how you delete a column or row in Excel. You can also add columns or rows. So let's say that I want to add a column in between D and E. I'm going to right click over column E and choose insert. That inserts a column to the left of column E and pushes everything right. All the columns are renamed to fit that alphabetical pattern. I'm going to click undo. Again, I want a column between D and E, so I'm going to right click on E, choose insert. Everything gets pushed to the right, and a new column is now between D and the old column E. Let's say you want to add some rows. I'm going to right click on row 4, header, choose insert. Notice that everything gets pushed down. So when you insert a row, insert, it inserts above the selected row. When you insert a column, it inserts to the left of the selected column. If you prefer to not use the right-click method, you can also use the Insert command found in the Cells group on the Home ribbon. So to insert a column, you would select your column, go to the Insert command, and tell it to Insert Sheet Columns. That will insert the new column to the left of your selected column. If you want to insert a row, select your row, go to the Insert command, and click Insert Sheet Rows. And that will insert a row above your selected row.